pusher that honestly becomes very difficult to deal with.
Guys, as we get into game one, make sure you tweet at us with hashtag KGNWin if you think Team Kinguin are going to take this game, and hashtag S04Win if you think Schalke are going to take it. Interesting compositions from both of these two teams, perhaps slightly unconventional picks with that Kennen AD carry. If I were to push you here, Vedius, who do you think has the game plan to win this one out? Which composition do you think works better?
Well, I mean, that's a
tough question. I apologize.
Because I'm looking at, when you look at the actual compositions, I feel that Schalke have kind of gotten, I mean, they got Shen and Kha'Zix, which is an incredibly strong combo. When you also add to the fact that Lulu makes the team fighting power that much better, it looks good. But then on the other side, you've got LeBlanc, really potent, really good at snowballing. You have a pushing lane in the bottom for Kinguin, where they could look to have the LeBlanc roam and set up an early snowball. So I think that a lot of this game is going to be determined by the early game, and I think that it's on Kinguin to try and force these plays.
Definitely, as we are on to the Summoners Rift for the first game of the first series of the first Challenger Series split of this year. It's 2017, guys, and Singed has been picked in the top lane here for Ice Beasto. Looks like he's going to meet up with Smitty J a little bit, but not really much action expected early game here.
Well, the great thing about Ice Beasto is that when we saw him during the Challenger Series qualifiers, he was actually forced to play these tanks like the Shen and the Maokai, and he did an incredible job on them. He was such a standout performer. The way in which he peeled, his target focus, honestly his outplays that he made in 1v1 and 2v2 was really impressive to watch, and I am super excited to see how well he does on this Singed, because I think as a player, he is, as you mentioned, as we were discussing, someone that kind of reminds you of Alfar.
It definitely is, and I think that sort of attitude where there's a degree of confidence, almost arrogance in your ability to outplay the opposition is something that is needed in top lane at the moment. Even though it's a tank meta, you do need to understand that you're probably going to get 2v1'd a lot of the time, and if you can be confident in your ability to outplay your opponents, sometimes you turn those ganks around.
Certainly can be. So now we need to look at the early game pathing, because Lulex, it looks like he's going to be starting on top side. That means that he can invest in the early Scuttle Crab bot. He knows the bottom lane is going to get pushed in. He knows that mid lane is going to be pushed in, so at least he has the bottom side vision control. It means that early dragons reduces that ever so slight risk, and also the early ganking power that you may see from a level 4 Ivern, because we know that the Ivern's clear speed is very quick, and something that he does like to do is perhaps just walk mid, walk bot, and he can force a flash, maybe if he's lucky, get a kill.
Is there not a risk here for Schalke that they've got a Kha'Zix who's a very strong early jungler who can get in and out of fights pretty easily, and then most of their lanes seem to just be, you know, they're going to get pushed in. Castin doesn't work too well into LeBlanc early game, nor does Kennen Lulu into the Karma Varus. Is there not a weakness that Kha'Zix just won't find anywhere he can actually get a good gank off?
Well, that could very well be a difficulty for him, but he can compensate for that by drawing pressure in the jungle. And if you're forcing the enemy laners to constantly retreat back to that half of the map, to have to deal with the constantly invading Kha'Zix, that could be one way to ease up a bit of freedom. But also if you are Kinguin, even if there's not a huge amount of CC in the lanes, Kha'Zix has a lot of damage. So if you move down to the bottom lane, look, Kennen, he's always going to have a lot of CC, right? There's always the potential to dive down in the bottom lane. Mid is a little bit harder to gank, but if that LeBlanc uses her distortion, then you can very easily punish it as a Kha'Zix. So the laners of Kinguin just have to be very aware, as Lulex already looking for his first gank.
Now onto Sebex, has used the distortion quite recently, has to flash, Lulex follows him up, and this is going to be first blood going over to Schalke as Lulex finally swipes away Sebex.
And this is exactly what we were talking about. LeBlanc playing hyper-aggressively in the mid lane. You have to be aware of the early ganking power of the Kha'Zix. If you play too aggressively, then there's a big window to punish, and that is exactly what Lulex is able to do. So Schalke off to a great start.
Yeah, getting Lulex already rolling on that Kha'Zix snowball, allowing Selfie a little bit more time to farm up in the lane, and burning the teleport from Sebex is huge. Have another look at this.
So you know that Kha'Zix is going to be starting topside. That should have been evident from the fact that Shen was coming up all. He goes around to his blue, he gets the Scuttle Crab in the river. Sebex does not respect the possibility of Kha'Zix being nearby. He's super overextended in the mid lane and he gets heavily punished for it. Really good pathing from Lulex, and honestly, a great thing to do for a Kassadin, because it is so difficult for him to get through the laning phase against the LeBlanc, given how aggressive the LeBlanc can be, and you have to try and punish it as a jungler, and I have to give credit for Lulex for recognizing that and effectively punishing it.
I want to give credit to Selfie in that play as well, because it almost looked like Sebex was going to escape, and Selfie held that flash until he knew that Lulex was going to catch him up and get that final auto attack down. Means that he still has that summoner spell, makes it even harder for Tabasco to try and get another gank in that mid lane.
So now Tabasco hitting that level 4 mark. You can see it's actually very difficult for him to try and get any ganks. So you have to try and invest in early vision, if you can, to try and predict where Lulex is looking to get those ganks, and then your laners can play accordingly.
Looks like Kinguin are just going to put up get pushed back a little bit here by Schalke. Interesting lane matchup here. The Varus and Karma should really have the push advantage early on, but Upset's going in. Exhaust comes down. D-Lord almost takes out Upset. Woolite's going to trade onto Vander now, who needs to retreat because Upset is in no fit condition to fight. Although he does have those pots burning through. Woolite takes another little bit of poke, but here comes Tabasco. Just lolloping his way into the lane, trying to catch out Upset, who will try and flash away. Root Caller is available, and there it lands. Upset has to try and heal. Gets himself out. Kinguin not quite able to capitalize, but do burn the summoners on that cannon.
Schalke's bottom lane playing hyper aggressively. They realized that they actually had a bit of a push on the wave. They used that as an advantage. They just put the shield on top of Cannon. He lightning rushes in. He then gets the support from Vander. And when you have all those empowered auto attacks, you're able to land the W. It's a lot of damage very early on into the game because the base stats are just so strong that Woolite can't really deal with it. So really impressive aggression from Upset and Vander. They force a couple of, or at least they force the exhaust, but they stay a little bit too long. They get punished from the roam from Tabasco, and now they've got little to no summoners in the bottom lane.
You can see both the junglers there thinking that perhaps another gank would happen in the bottom lane, setting up for the counter gank, but Lulex has control of this bottom side river, and with an Infernal Drake on the cards, that's quite an important area of vision control.
It certainly is, and the big thing that we need to note as well is the fact that Selfie now has a lot more freedom to roam. Off the back of that very early gank, he is now feeling so comfortable that he can roam around the map and look for plays bot side. This is not how the matchup should typically be. He's been able to get to level 6, very easily picked up the Catalyst, and this is exactly how Schalke wanted to start off the game. We talked about how they have scaling compositions and how usually the laning phase will be pretty difficult for them, but off the back of that single gank in the mid lane, this has allowed Selfie so much more freedom, and now he can help the bottom lane that should be struggling under the push.
But you're talking about how, Schalke are in a good position. They played this early game pretty effectively. If you're Kinguin here, what are your next steps? How do you get back into this? Because it feels like they're already falling behind against a composition that scales better than that.
Well, I mean, that's the big question, because if you're going to pick a LeBlanc, you're asking to try and get that early snowball. She definitely has a very potent mid-game, but if Kassadin can get there before her, her value is significantly reduced. And this is why she definitely is a bit of a risk, and why a lot of teams have said that you can afford to leave her available. So if you're LeBlanc now, you kind of need to look to either set up a roam using the teleport. You get a bit of deep vision. You know there's no flash down the bot lane. Even though it is a Kassadin, you should still be able to push him in with your pretty effective wave clear. But at this point, if Sebex just keeps staying in the lane, he's going to struggle to trade against the Kassadin, because it really is, once you complete that Rod of Ages, where the LeBlanc does not win that matchup anymore.
Looks like Upset's going towards the build you mentioned in Pick and Ban as well, with that Blade of the Ruin King. Might build a Wit's End later on as well. It's what we've tended to see out of those on-hit cannons, perhaps with a Runans alongside that. But I want to just talk about a little bit more about this bot lane, because it's felt consistently like Kinguin have had a slight push advantage, apart from when we saw, Schalke having to burn their summoners earlier on. If you're Kinguin, how do you utilize this? Because you can see that Schalke have a composition that dives really well, and they have great map awareness with the Stand United as well, and the double TP. If you're Kinguin, how do you use the fact that you have a push advantage in bot lane to your favor?
Well, it relies very heavily on getting that snowball in the mid, right? If you're picking this composition that can push a lot, you ideally want to just slowly work your way down onto the tower, and then when it gets low enough, you look to try and set up a rotation bot so that you can either force the tower or maybe even force a couple kills. The big problem for Kinguin is that they always have to be aware of this possible Shen TP down to the bottom lane. Right now, they're just keeping that pressure up bot lane. Sometimes what you'll see teams do is they'll rotate to the top to avoid that potential level 6 from the Shen. But for the time being, they have a fair amount of pressure. The range advantage that Woolite has over the cannon is resulting in a lot of chip damage coming down. But again, it all comes back to this mid lane priority. The fact that Sebex right now has a push and can't properly be able to utilize it is the big problem for Team Kinguin.
Tabasco was able to sneak in and steal away that blue buff as well, so that's going to stop Selfie being able to just spam wave clear as much as possible. A lot of Dark Seals picked up in this game, Betty. As 4 on that top lane Ice Beasto and 1 also on Tabasco. Perhaps a little bit more investment in that early sustain than we tend to see.
Well, I mean, usually we see maybe 2, 3 at max, but it looks like that Ice Beasto is just investing heavily into this regeneration.
Lulex caught by the root caller. Daisy's going to come down as well, but Tabasco was isolated. Stand United. Tabasco caught unawares by all of Schalke as they collapse on him incredibly quickly. And now D-Lord is getting chased out by Lulex as well. Will get swiped away. Isolation damage is just too darn much.
And he still had the flash. He still had the exhaust. He does not respect the damage. And he ends up getting punished for it. Now with Schalke, 5 members strong down the bottom half of the map. Oh, Kassadin's being sent top, but they're looking for Woolite.
Chains of Corruption will connect, and I think this will stop Lulex being able to go any further. Didn't really have the mana for it either. But this might be the first turret going down for Schalke. They have got 3 members down here, and Smithy J still has that teleport if they want to push for it.
Well, turrets are pretty healthy for the time being, but Dragon could definitely be a card on the table if Schalke want to look to prioritize it. I feel like they've been a little bit greedy with prioritizing enemy jungle. And trying to go for that kill onto Woolite, which means that going for that objective now would be very risky. But that whole play comes off the back of Tabasco moving into the mid lane to try and provide some support for Kinguin's Sevex. And because he did not have that flash from his play down in the bottom lane, he wasn't able to do very much. You can just see Lulex is already trying to set up for a gank in the mid lane. Just have a look at the positioning of Tabasco. He's just posturing around the mid. He wants to try and catch Lulex out of position. And there's no support from Sevex. He's in a 1 versus 2 right now. It's so much easier for Selfie to come in and help him. And there's the Shen ult on top of that. He didn't have his flash back up. Very questionable decision-making from Tabasco. This is not the sort of jungling that we saw from him during the CSQ, and now we see more action in the bottom.
Upset popping the slicing mouse to try and get in. Selfie's here as well, and now Woolite's caught underneath this turret. D-Lord the new target for Lulex. He'll dive the tower as well. TP in by Ice Beasto, but he's caught in the midst of 4 members of Schalke, and they will melt him away in a heartbeat.
It doesn't matter how many Dark Seals you have, no regeneration is going to help you in a 1 versus 4. Schalke extending their kill lead to 6-0. 3,500 gold so far, and a lot of their advantages have come off the mistakes from Team Kinguin so far.
This is the Schalke we were expecting to see when we saw this lineup. Incredibly strong play, understanding where they need to be and when they need to be there. And in all honesty, after the scouting grounds, after we saw them not pick up any players from there, I was a little bit worried for the Schalke lineup, but they have formulated a team and a synergy that I did not expect to see this early on in Challenger Series.
Well, honestly, they're doing a great job so far. As we backtrack, we can see that the all-in potential of this Kennen and Lulu bot lane is incredibly potent, simply due to the sheer amount of crowd control that they have. Upset, all they really needed to do was force the summoner spells out of Team Kinguin, allow the rotation from both Selfie and Lulex, and then the TPs come in to just get the collapse. I think at that point, Beasto really should have just cancelled his TP. Nevertheless, Schalke get themselves another 3 kills. They get themselves the first tower gold. Now, if you're Schalke, you need to set up that 1-3-1. Kassadin has completed the Rod of Ages. His TP is unavailable, but you can just move him to the bottom lane. You send Upset and Vander over to the mid. LeBlanc now has no roaming options. This LeBlanc has effectively missed the window where she can punish her early game strength, and I think it's going to be very difficult for Sevex to really come back into this game.
See, Smithy J's picked up the Tiamat as well, so looking towards more of that split push roll early on, you know, getting that wave push into the Singed. And Singed is going to clear waves pretty quickly anyway, but just being able to push him back a little bit is exactly what Smithy J is able to do here, and it means they can set up quite an effective 1-3-1, as you were saying.
For the time being, though, Schalke just going to stick to standard lanes. I feel like this isn't the best use of time, as Selfie just making his presence known, sending a bit of a message. You could alternatively send Upset and Vander up to the top lane, because Shen isn't really going to have enough wave clear to deal with both an AD carry, quote-unquote, and a Lulu. But this is more of what I wanted to see, because now what you do is you force Sevex into a side lane where he has no turret. It makes it easier to get the collapse on, and you're also giving Selfie a lot of free farm and safety thanks to his turret, while putting a lot of pressure in the mid, and basically forcing Kinguin into a situation that they don't want to be in.
That's exactly what they're doing. You could have put it on a tin. Sevex is going to try and jump in here onto Upset, but doesn't connect. And as you say, it's very difficult to get an enemy target isolated when there's a Lulu right there as well, who can just wild growth and can just whimsy him away, can put that help picks on as well. It feels very much like Lulex has had the domination in the jungle early on in this game, and really Tabasco made that one misplay, and apart from that we haven't seen him get too many effective ganks off with this Ivern.
Well, that's the risk that you run when you pick an Ivern. Mainly you're playing towards the mid-game team fights, right? You have a lot of peel, you have a lot of utility that is very effective once he's completed things like the Athene's Unholy Grail, he's got the Redemption, he's got the Locket. It's that mid-game point where it really has a lot of value, so you just have to make sure that you're providing support for your laners. You're not necessarily trying to set up ganks, maybe put a bit of pressure, but you invest in vision and you just invest in allowing time. Because Kinguin did have a very powerful mid-game spike. They gave away a lot of early leads, and Schalke just done a great job of punishing and snowballing. And now I feel that, honestly, it is a bit of a mix-and-match composition. I feel that LeBlanc isn't necessarily the strongest pick here, especially when you pair it up with the Singe, because they kind of want to do a lot of different things, right? And now they end up getting... And now they're suffering for it, and because I feel like a lot of this stemmed on the LeBlanc doing well. You needed that early push, you needed the LeBlanc to roam around the map. You wanted to be the ones to get that priority on the early 1-3-1, so that Kassadin would be forced into a side lane before he was able to get to a point that he was happy with. And now, Kinguin, because they risked a lot onto Sebex and he ended up giving away first blood at 3 minutes, you're now in the situation that you're in, which is a 5,000 gold deficit at 15 minutes into the game.
A massive gold lead, almost insurmountable this early on. We already saw Schalke take that Infernal Drake as well. Now they're setting up down towards that middle lane to see perhaps if they can continue to pressure. Actually, they're going to jump onto Tabasco here. It's caught out slightly, trying to get away. Chain of Corruption onto Upset. Here's Daisy as well to join the fray. Schalke won't be able to get much more out of that, but they do get the ultimate from Tabasco, so Daisy is down for the time being.
So what I'd like to see now from Schalke is using that channel to try and force a play. Up in the top side, Singe has hit up 11.
Oh, Lulex absolutely takes out Tabasco. Just snipes him down. Really good vision control by them in that blue side jungle as well to know that Tabasco was by himself. And Selfie's now trading into Ice Beaster as well. Tabasco nowhere to be seen because Lulex is on his way up, but Selfie doesn't even need the help. Selfie will just take him down as well.
No kill threat from Ice Beasto. The Kassadin is free to do as he pleases. Level 12 already. The Rod of Ages being completed makes it so easy for him to win out in that 1v1 against Singe. It really helps that he has that immense mobility from his ultimate too. And even if he didn't, Lulex was rotating up after the kill that he just got onto Tabasco in the enemy jungle. So honestly, this is such a clean game coming out from Schalke, really punishing the mistakes from Kinguin earlier.
Is this just the beginning of the end for Kinguin in this game? Is there any way they get back into this? Is there anything they can do as Upset jumps in onto D-Lord? D-Lord sniped away, almost goes down, just about survives. Off towards the backside, now the double TP in by Kinguin. They want this fight. Sebex tries to get the chains down, but Schalke dissuade him from taking the fray. And Kinguin will defend their support, but they use 2 teleports to do it.
This is very much what I wanted to see from Schalke. They have a good lead now where they can force these dives. It's fairly safe with the Shen ultimate and the Lulu as well. The problem is they were a little bit uncoordinated. They thought they had a little bit more damage than they actually did. It's very... what's the word? It's a bit of a bait when you're going with a Kennen ultimate. You think you're going to do an immense amount of damage, and then you're like, ah, I'm AD Kennen, my ult doesn't do anything. So even if you land all this CC onto the targets, if you don't have the damage to facilitate it, it doesn't really result in anything. You do get all of the summoner spells out from the bottom lane of Team Kinguin, but unfortunately for Schalke, they're not going to be able to get any objectives off the back of it.
We're getting to the point where Schalke can quite easily enact these dives if they do it, effectively. Like even there, they didn't really lose much for doing that. They burnt Selfie's TP, but that's about it. If you're Kinguin, how do you defend those dives? Because you've got good anti-siege in the Varus. He can poke from quite long range and clear waves relatively quickly. But if you're just going to get dived on, how do Kinguin actually defend against
You try to make cross-map plays. So if they're going to go for a dive, you force them to invest the resources onto someone like a LeBlanc. And then you back away, but you trade the turret, right? So sure, they might get the mid tier 1, but you end up getting the bot tier 1. And the problem is, right now for Kinguin, is that because there's so much map mobility just from the side of Schalke alone, it's very difficult for Kinguin to try and make these cross map plays. And it doesn't help that you have a Singe in a side lane who does little to no damage to towers, as well as a LeBlanc who's so weak that she can barely stay in a lane 1v1 against a Kassadin.
What is the power of Singe in this composition, though? Because it feels very much like he's just kind of split in a different lane for a lot of the game. He's actually going to see Upset onto Woolite. Look at the on-hit damage. Upset will just take him out. And now D-Lord the target as all of Schalke go for the dive. No, take him out as well. I think they used Exhaust on a mimic of LeBlanc there for a second, but still doesn't matter. Still get the 2 kills.
Still worth.
Yeah,
they end up getting the kills that they want. Now they're looking to pick up this tier 1 in the mid as well. Really clean execution, punishing the no summoner spell bottom lane of Team Kinguin that they forced out earlier on. going to extend their goal lead even further. So far, working towards that perfect game for Schalke.
I was waiting until you were going to say it. I was like, we can't say it at 14 minutes. Now that they've got mid-tier, perhaps we can.
I mean, when you're 10-0 at 19 minutes and you have an 8,000 goal lead, you can definitely say fairly optimistically they're on a pretty good track to a perfect game.
Yeah, you've cursed them, Vedius. We're just going to see them collapse from here on out. But speaking of perfect games, a lot of that comes down to how well your team communicates and coordinates in these fights. And we can see Veteran was talking about it in that documentary. Great synergy. We're going to have another look at how well Schalke actually combine.
The Lulu plus Kennen combo, it's so easy for him to close the gap. Yes. A surprising amount of damage early on definitely helps, given that he does have a fairly significant level advantage over his opponent. And then just to make matters worse, they added in the Chenault to secure the dive and get themselves the turret. So now if you're Schalke, you can do whatever you want. To close out the game quickly, what they should do is continue with the lane setup that they have, keep Kassadin in the top lane, but then they should push out mid and rotate top with the duo that they have. Just force that tier 1 down. The Baron's going to be spawning, which honestly Schalke could just rush. And even if Team Kinguin come to contest, you just force a fight and you win it. So honestly, this is Schalke's game to lose, and it would be very impressive if they somehow lost it.
Well, they've been very impressive thus far. Perhaps they'll surprise us by being very impressive in the other way. But Smitty J, without the Stand United at the moment, won't actually be able to join the team fight if it happens, apart from using that TP. Lulex is going to jump onto Ice Beasto here, and Singe is caught between a rock and a hard place. Smitty J takes him down. Upset on the chase to Woolite. Blade of the Ruin King into the slicing Maelstrom. Look at the damage just coming down onto Woolite. He's dead. Selfie kills him. D-Lord goes down as well. And Schalke just engaging all across the map and taking whatever they please.
Who needs strategy? Who needs map movements when you have such a massive gold lead that you can literally just kill whoever you want? Baron is going to be the next objective on the board for Schalke, and I think they're going to be able to take it fairly quickly.
Yep, definitely. Upset's not quite there yet, so one of their big damage dealers actually hasn't joined that Baron push, but should be pretty easy for them. Doesn't even look like Team Kinguin are going to contest it. Baron, 21 minutes into the game, 13 kills to 0, and an 11,000 gold lead now for Schalke.
Definitely a rough time for Team Kinguin, their debut in the Challenger Series. But you can see that Ice Beasto just trying to be a pain. He's trying to get as much farm as he can. It's unfortunate for him that Lulex is in the bottom half of the jungle. And because you're isolated and you have the improved Void Spikes, it means that that's an 80% slow. So it doesn't matter how fast you are, Singe, you're going to get caught up. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, the duo combo of Lulu plus Kennen just means that it's super easy to dive onto a bottom lane. That, I mean, the Karma did have flash, but there was no point. There was too much damage. There was the cast-in, and
D-Lord died again. I
He
think it was just Lulex hiding in that blue side jungle and just catching out as he went to try and get some vision down. But
the Lord be the dead. Nailed it.
Top cack. Yeah, great play by Lulex. Great vision control actually as well, you have to say, from Schalke 04. They've got the control wards where they need it. They're moving. Selfie's trying to get onto Sebex. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to take him down, but all it is dissuading him from being around that turret.
Exactly that. He's just making his presence known. He's delivering him a handwritten letter that says, "Dear LeBlanc, should you not vacate the premises, you will lose your life. Kind regards, Selfie."
Delivered on a nether blade.
Yep, as they go for the dive.
Gonna go straight in underneath this inhibitor tower. Woolite is low already. Upset, turning his attentions back towards the turret. Will take it down, and now the inhibitor is open. Daisy has fallen, as many members of Team Kinguin have before. Ice Beasto trying to be a nuisance, as you say, but even with the Righteous Glory, can't get close enough to this Schalke lineup. And Lulex is just splitting in that top lane. Should be able to take the inhibitor tower down there as well. TP coming in from Selfie as they get the first inhibitor and now turn their attentions up towards top lane as well. Selfie wants something. Tries to get onto Sebex. Double taunt on D-Lord and Ice Beasto, and Lulex joins the fray. Ice Beasto caught up by Upset as well. Even underneath the tower, there is no escape from Schalke. Sebex caught out by Lulex. Woolite trying to retreat, but even on the fountain, you can't survive. Schalke 0-4 with what is a perfect game in their first game and in the first game of the EU Challenger Series.
This is what you'd expect from a former LCS team, even though a lot of the players are not from the original roster. Given the talent, given the makeup, Schalke come in with a strong and powerful message in this first game of the Challenger Series.
Just superb play by them, and actually it's interesting because I think up until a couple of weeks ago we'd only seen 17 perfect games ever, and we've seen 3 in the course of about a couple of weeks. One in NACS, one in EU LCS, and then one here as well. It's absolutely crazy.
It's very impressive, and you know, when we look back, all of that just came down to that early game play. That one gank from the Kazakhs allowed allowed Selfie the freedom that he needed to get through that very difficult laning phase, and then he had so much more priority over mid lane. The push that they had in the bottom lane couldn't be utilized. They ended up getting caught out a lot. And it was just Schalke just snowballing every single lane in the bottom half of the map. Lulex doing so much work. And then it was just a matter of time before both Lulex and Selfie could roam down to the bot, set up that dive. And that's really where things started to crumble for Team Kinguin.
It's interesting because in picks and bans, I was worried slightly for Schalke that they wouldn't have the early game presence to be able to deal with Kinguin. You know, Kinguin had LeBlanc lane, you've got Karma, you've got Varus, lots of strong damage in that early game. And actually it was Schalke who really took the bull by the horns and were able to push an advantage early on.
I feel like that if you were Team Kinguin, perhaps you could have gone for something a little bit more snowbally. Maybe the Elise, maybe the Lee Sin. I mean, Elise was something that we saw a lot from Tabasco during the Challenger Series qualifiers. And it's because you have so many strong laners that you could have really facilitated that. You know, Elise is great for diving. I just think that they pigeonholed themselves a little bit too much by going for that Ivan pick.
Yeah, it makes sense. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have Game 2 between Kinguin and Schalke 04. Make sure you guys stay tuned. As we are on to the Summoners Rift for the first game of the first series of the first Challenger Series split of this year.
Lulex already looking for his first game.
And onto Sebex, has used the distortion quite recently, has to flash, Lulex follows him up, and this is going to be first blood going over to Schalke as Lulex finally swipes away Sebex. Lulex caught by the root caller, Daisy's going to come down as well, but Tabasco was isolated, Stand United. Tabasco caught unawares by all of Schalke as they collapse on him incredibly quickly, and now D-Lord is getting chased out by Lulex as well. Will get swiped away, isolation damage is just too darn much. And Selfie's here as well, and now Woolite's caught underneath his turret. D-Lord the new target for Lulex, he'll dive the tower as well. TP in by Ice Pisto, but he's caught in the midst of 4 members of Schalke, and they will melt him away in a heartbeat.
Up in the top side, Singed has
Lulex absolutely takes out Tabasco. In a different lane for a lot of the game. He's actually going to see Upset onto Woolite. Look at the on-hit damage. Upset will just take him out. And now D-Lord the target as all of Schalke go for the dive. It's Woolite trying to retreat, but even on the fountain you can't survive. Schalke 04 with what is a perfect game in their first game and in the first game of the EU Challenger Series.
This is what you'd expect.